Lotteries. I understand lotteries are a fantasy we can indulge, buy a ticket, buy a scratch-off, buy a number. But I want you to understand the economic costs of lotteries, and you make the decision whether on balance you're for them or against them. But you need to understand the costs, which of course the state governments that use lotteries don't want to stress. I'm being polite. Let's go through it. A lottery. A lottery takes a lot of money from a lot of people. Each one buys $5, $10, whatever it is. Most people buy a little. So a very large number of people give up a little bit of money to make the few winners who win anything significant very rich. Let's go through that again. Large numbers of people who don't have much money give up a little so that a few people can become rich. Now, those many who buy the tickets, they would have used those few dollars to buy goods and services, which would have given people jobs, producing and selling those goods and services. If you put all that money in the hands of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, they're not going to spend all that money on goods and services because they're going to be so rich. They're going to save a huge portion of it, which means that money isn't getting spent on goods and services. That's a cost in an economy where there's already trouble buying things. You're making that process worse. Moreover, the few who win will now take these enormous sums of money and invest them in the stock and bond market. You know what that does? It drives up the price of stocks and bonds. 10% of the people in this country own 80% of the stocks and bonds. So by moving money from little people who would never have used $5 or $10 to buy stock, collecting it all and giving it to a few rich people who buy stocks and bonds, you're helping that part of the economy that needs it least, while you are depriving the average buyer and seller of goods and services of what they do need most. Next, it's a kind of tax. The vast majority of people who buy lottery tickets do not ever see that money again. They are paying money to the government because the government takes the lion's share of that lottery ticket money that you're paying. So the government gets a revenue, doesn't have to call it a tax because it's voluntary, but it's a way of the government not having to tax corporations and the rich because they're getting more out of average people by calling it a lottery, even though 99% of them will never see anything from that other than losing the money. And since a good part of it has to be given to a few rich people, it's not even as good as a tax. A tax would have at least taken the money from everybody, given it to the government, who could then use it to provide some services. But with a lottery, a good chunk of it has to be given to a few individual rich people, and though that's not available for the government to do something. And finally, as it's well known, this kind of thing is a form of gambling and therefore is a boost for the addiction problem that some gamblers have. You should have all that in your mind before you think of a lottery as purely the fun part about winning a lot of money, which very few people do.